The signal had been pinging for 11 days before anyone bothered to check it. Danny Webb was not a hero. He was a mechanic with a ship that needed new fuel injectors and a bank account that could not afford them. When the salvage beacon appeared on his scanner, he saw money floating in the void. Nothing more. The Derelict was a cash-in cargo hauler, old model, built for long hauls between frontier colonies. It drifted in unclaimed space, tumbling slowly with no power, no life signs, no response to hails. Standard abandoned vessel. Danny had stripped dozens like it over his 12 years working the outer lanes. He matched rotation with the dead ship and locked his docking clamps to the emergency airlock. The seal hissed, pressure equalized, and he stepped inside with his torch and his scanner and his complete ignorance of what waited for him. The smell hit first. Old blood, rotting organic matter. Something chemical underneath it all, like medical supplies gone bad. Danny pulled his mask tighter and moved forward. The corridor walls told a story he did not want to read. Deep gouges ran through the metal, for parallel lines repeated over and over, cutting through wiring and support beams like they were made of soft clay. Emergency lights flickered on backup power, painting everything in dim red. Dried blood covered the floor in patches, different colors suggesting different species. Danny found the first body near the cargo bay doors. Cashin, male, torn nearly in half. His weapon was still in his hand, unfired. Whatever killed him had been too fast. The cargo bay doors had been reinforced. Triple-layered Durasteel with magnetic locks and energy barriers. Someone had spent serious money keeping whatever was inside from getting out. The doors now hung open, one torn completely off its hinges. Danny should have turned back. Any sensible person would have. But the scanner showed valuables inside, and his fuel injectors were not going to pay for themselves that he stepped through. The cargo bay was massive, designed for bulk transport. Cages lined the walls, dozens of them, all sizes. Most were empty. Some contained remains that Danny did not look at closely. Energy barriers flickered weakly on dying power cells in the far corner. One cage still held a living thing IT was small. That was the first surprise. Everything Danny had seen suggested a monster, something huge and unstoppable. This creature was barely the size of a large dog, curled in the corner of its cage with its back to him. Danny approached slowly. The cage's energy barrier crackled but held. Through the blue shimmer, he could see matted silver fur hanging loose over bones that pressed too sharply against skin. 6 legs tucked beneath a body that had not eaten properly in weeks. A tail wrapped around the whole pathetic bundle, tip twitching with each labored breath. The creature knew he was there. It turned its head, and Danny saw eyes that glowed faint blue in the darkness. Not the eyes of a mindless beast. Something intelligent looked back at him, something exhausted and starving and completely without hope that IT should have attacked. The barrier was failing. A few good strikes would bring it down. But the creature just watched him, too weak or too broken to try. Then it made a sound. Not a growl, not a snarl. A small, desperate whimper, like a dog that had been kicked too many times and stopped expecting anything but more pain. Danny Webb was not a hero. He kept telling himself that as he studied the cage controls. He repeated it as he figured out how to lower the barrier safely. He said it out loud as the energy field dropped and nothing separated him from a creature that had killed everyone on this ship. The animal did not move. It just watched him with those tired blue eyes. Danny reached into his pack and pulled out a ration bar. Emergency food, tasteless and dense with nutrients. He unwrapped it slowly, letting the creature see what he was doing, and tossed it gently into the cage. The animal stared at the food. Then it stared at Danny. Then, moving like every motion cost more energy than it had, it dragged itself forward and ate. Danny sat down on the cold deck and watched. When the creature finished, it looked at him again, and something in those eyes had changed. Not trust. Not yet. But maybe the faintest possibility that trust could exist. He should report this. He should call the authorities and let them handle whatever this was. That was the smart thing, the safe thing, the thing that would keep him alive. Danny stood up and walked back to his ship. He returned with a blanket, more food, and a container of water. The creature watched every movement, but did not flinch when Danny set the items down inside the cage. When he stepped back, it drank the water in desperate gulps and then collapsed onto the blanket with a sound that might have been a sigh. It took Danny 4 hours to figure out how to move the cage onto his ship. The creature stayed quiet the whole time, sleeping or pretending to sleep, conserving whatever strength it had left. As his ship pulled away from the derelict, Danny looked at his new passenger through the cargo bay monitor. He still had no idea what it was. He did not know where it came from or why it had been caged or what he was supposed to do with it now. But he knew one thing for certain. He was not going to let it die. That decision, made alone in the dark between stars, would change everything. 3 days without sleep turned a man into something less than human. Danny had not left his cargo bay since leaving the derelict. He sat against the wall, watching the cage, watching the creature inside slowly return from the edge of death. Nutrient paste and water. That was all he had to offer. That and his presence, which he hoped was better than nothing. The creature, which he had started calling Rook in his head because it needed a name and the word felt right, had eaten everything he provided. Its breathing had steadied. The shaking had stopped, but it still flinched every time Danny moved too quickly, still pressed itself against the far wall of the cage when he came close. Whatever had happened to this animal before Danny found it, the memories had not faded on the 4th day. Danny finally allowed himself to sleep. He woke to find Rook watching him through the cage bars, those blue eyes tracking his every breath. When Danny sat up, the creature did not look away. Progress. Maybe. Danny used the ship's database to search for answers. He described what he had found: the silver fur, the 6 legs, the glowing eyes, the obvious intelligence. The results came back in seconds, and Danny felt his stomach drop. Silver Direhound. Native to a high-gravity world in the outer reach. Pack hunters with intelligence estimated near sentient classification. Physical capabilities include reinforced bone structure, claws capable of cutting through ship-grade alloy, and bite force sufficient to crush pressure suits. Speed and reflexes exceed all known galactic standards. Threat classification. Category 9. Danny scrolled through the data with numb fingers. Category 9 meant planetary evacuation protocols. It meant shoot on sight orders. It meant that a single adult Silvern could and had destroyed entire colonies before being stopped. The creature in his cargo bay was a monster. The database was very clear about that. Danny closed the files and looked at Rook through the monitor. The Direhound had curled up on the blanket, tail wrapped around its body, eyes closed in what might have been sleep. It looked small. It looked tired. It looked like every abandoned animal Danny had ever seen. Desperate for something as simple as safety, he should turn back. He should contact the authorities and report what he had found. They would send specialists to handle this. Professionals who knew what they were doing. Danny thought about the whimper. That small, broken sound from a creature that should have been terrifying. He thought about the way Rook had eaten from his hand, trembling the entire time, that he kept flying toward the station. Docking was nerve-wracking. Danny covered the cage with a tarp and listed his cargo as salvage parts. The station inspector did not look twice. Why would he? Nobody expected a lone mechanic to be smuggling a Category 9 predator in his cargo bay. Danny traded his salvage find for supplies. Food that might work better than nutrient paste. Medical supplies for wound treatment. A stronger blanket because the cargo bay got cold during station docking. He told himself he was just keeping the creature healthy until he figured out what to do with it. He almost believed it. On the return trip to his ship, a Thessan trader blocked his path. She was tall, blue-skinned, with the sharp features of her species and eyes that missed nothing. "Mechanic," she said. "You came from the derelict." Danny kept his face neutral. "Salvage run. Nothing special. Nothing special does not make a man look like he has not slept in days." She stepped closer. "I am Oria Ven. I know what was on that ship. The smugglers were moving illegal cargo. Very illegal. Did you find anything interesting?" Danny thought about lying. Something in the trader's eyes suggested she would know. "Nothing that survived," he said carefully. Oria studied him for a long moment. Then she nodded and stepped aside. "Be careful, mechanic. Some cargo is more trouble than it is worth. Danny hurried back to his ship with his supplies, and her words echoing in his head. Rook was awake when he returned, pressed against the cage bars, making a sound Danny had not heard before. It took him a moment to realize the dire hound was worried. It had noticed he was gone, and it had worried about him. Something cracked in Danny's chest that he had not known was frozen, that he opened the cage door. Rook stared at him, body tense, ready to flee or fight or whatever survival demanded. Danny sat down on the deck and held out a piece of the new food. Some kind of protein block designed for carnivores. "It is okay," he said softly. "I'm not going to hurt you." Rook did not move for a long time. Then, slowly, carefully, it crept forward on all 6 legs. Its nose touched Danny's fingers. It took the food and retreated, but not as far as before. They stayed like that, human and dire hound, separated by a few feet of empty space that felt like a galaxy. Danny offered another piece. Rook came closer to take a T.B by the time the protein block was gone. Rook was eating from Danny's palm without shaking. Danny reached out slowly and let his fingers brush against silver fur. Rook froze, every muscle tensed. Then, gradually, the tension faded to a dire hound. A Category 9 monster. A creature designed by evolution to kill anything in its path. Leaning into a human's touch like it was the only gentle thing it had ever known. Danny sat in his cargo bay with his hand resting on Rook's head and knew that he was never going to turn this animal over to anyone. Whatever came next, they would face it together. He had no idea what he had just promised, but he meant it. 2 months changed everything. Rook no longer looked like a starving refugee. The silver fur that had hung dull and matted now shone like polished metal under the ship's lights. Muscle had filled out the sharp bones. The 6 legs moved with fluid grace that made Danny's heart race every time he remembered what those legs could do. But the change that mattered most was not physical. Rook followed Danny everywhere now. When he worked on the engine, Rook lay nearby and watched. When he slept, Rook curled up at the foot of his bed, those glowing eyes scanning the darkness for threats that never came. When Danny talked to himself during long flights, Rook tilted its head and listened like it understood every word. Maybe it did. The database said silver intelligence approached sentient levels. Danny had stopped thinking of Rook as an animal weeks ago. The imprint was complete. Danny had read about it in the files, how dire hounds formed pack bonds that could not be broken. He had not understood what that meant until he saw it happening. Rook had decided that Danny was pack. Family. The only thing in a universe worth protecting. Danny felt the same way, though he would never admit it out loud. Their first real test came during a salvage job on a wrecked mining platform. Danny had left Rook on the ship with strict instructions to stay hidden. The job was supposed to be simple. Get in, strip the valuable components, get out. He did not expect the pirates, 0.3 of them, waiting in the shadows, armed and clearly experienced at ambushing salvagers. Danny reached for his sidearm, knowing he was too slow, knowing this was how he died. The bulkhead behind him tore open. Rook came through the metal like it was made of paper. The dire hound was a blur of silver fury, moving faster than Danny's eyes could track. The first pirate went down before he could scream. The second managed to fire one shot that missed before Rook reached him. The third dropped his weapon and ran. Rook let him go. Then it turned to Danny and made a soft sound, checking if he was hurt. Danny stood in the wreckage of what had almost been his death and looked at the creature that had saved his life. His hands were shaking. His heart was pounding. And somewhere beneath the fear, something warm was spreading through his chest. "Good boy," he whispered. That Rook's tail moved. Just a little. Word spread after that. Rumors traveled fast on the frontier. A human mechanic with a monster as a companion. Some said it was a war beast, trained and controlled. Others said the human had made some kind of deal with dark forces. Nobody believed the truth, that the monster was simply loyal to the man who had shown it kindness. Danny kept a low profile and hoped the attention would fade, but IT did not. Ori Aven found him again at a fuel depot 3 systems from the mining platform incident. "You kept it," she said, looking at Rook with something between fear and fascination. "The dire hound from the smuggler's ship. You kept it." Danny stepped in front of Rook instinctively. He is not dangerous. It killed those pirates. They were going to kill me. He protected me. That is what he does. Oria studied Rook for a long moment. The dire hound watched her back, perfectly still, waiting to see if she was a threat. The Thessan Council has heard the rumors, Oria said finally. They do not believe them, but they're investigating anyway. If they find out what you have, they will send hunters. Danny felt cold spread through his body. Hunters, kill teams. Specialized soldiers trained to deal with Category 9 threats. They will not ask questions. They will not care about the bond you have formed. They will destroy the dire hound and probably you as well, just to be safe. Danny looked at Rook. The dire hound had moved closer, pressing against his leg, sensing his distress. Why are you warning me? Oria did not answer right away. She reached out slowly, giving Rook time to react, and touched the silver fur with trembling fingers. Rook, let her. Because I have never seen a dire hound do that, she said quietly. They're supposed to be monsters. This one acts like a companion. I do not understand it, but I want to, and I cannot understand if the council kills you both. She stepped back and straightened her coat. Run, mechanic. Run far and run fast. I will delay them as long as I can, but they will find you eventually. When they do, you had better have a plan. She walked away without looking back. Danny knelt beside Rook and wrapped his arms around that powerful neck. The dire hound made a rumbling sound in its chest, something almost like a purr. We're going to be okay, Danny said, not sure if he was talking to Rook or himself. We just need to stay ahead of them. We have done harder things. Rook pressed closer, offering comfort the only way it knew how. They had become family somewhere between stars. Now, Danny had to figure out how to keep that family alive, that he had faced long odds before, but never anything like this. Running became a way of life. Danny and Rook jumped from system to system, never staying more than a day in any one place. They took odd jobs for fuel money, quick repairs that did not require documentation, cargo runs that asked no questions. The frontier was full of people who minded their own business. Danny had never been more grateful for that, but the hunters were always behind them. Not close enough to catch, but close enough to feel. Oria sent coded messages when she could. 3 ships, 12 soldiers. A Thessan commander named Poldren who had made hunting dire hounds his life's purpose. She did not know where they were, but she knew they were coming. Danny plotted courses through dead zones and abandoned sectors. He shut down all unnecessary systems to minimize his signature. He taught Rook to stay quiet during scans, to curl into a ball in the shielded compartment he had built into the cargo bay. Y.IT worked for 6 weeks. Then it did not. They were passing near a dead moon when the first shot hit their engine. Danny had seconds to react. He threw power to the remaining thrusters and tried to run, but his ship was an old mechanic's hauler, not built for escape. The second shot took out his jump drive. The third disabled his weapons. He was dead in space, drifting toward a worthless rock with hunters closing in. Stay hidden, Danny told Rook as he pushed the dire hound toward the shielded compartment. Whatever happens, stay hidden. They are here for you, not me. Maybe I can talk them down. Rook made a sound of protest, those blue eyes flashing with something like anger. Please, Danny said. Trust me. Rook went into the compartment. Danny sealed it and walked to the airlock to meet whatever was coming. The hunter's shuttle docked with brutal efficiency. The airlock cycled open, and soldiers poured through, weapons raised, moving with the precision of professionals who had done this many times before. Their leader was last. Poldren was tall for a Thessan, with gray-blue skin marked by old scars. His eyes were cold as he surveyed Danny's ship. Search everywhere, he ordered. Find the creature. There is no creature, Danny said. Just me and a lot of spare parts. Poldren studied him. You are Danny Webb, salvage mechanic. No criminal record until 3 months ago, when you began running like a man with something to hide. We know what you took from the Derelict. We know what you have been protecting. This does not need to end badly for you. Give us the dire hound, and you walk away. Danny shook his head. I do not know what you are talking about. The commander's expression did not change. I lost my family to dire hounds. My colony, my home, everything I loved. 1 pack, 3 days, 2,000 dead. I was 7 years old, hiding in a storage container, listening to people scream. He stepped closer. I have dedicated my life to ensuring that no one else experiences what I did. So believe me when I tell you that I will tear this ship apart piece by piece to find what you are hiding. Danny felt his resolve waver. This was not a bureaucrat following orders. This was a man with scars that went deeper than skin. But he thought about Rook, the whimper in the cage. The first time the dire hound ate from his hand. The warmth of silver fur pressed against his side during long nights in the void. You can tear my ship apart, Danny said. You will not find anything because there is nothing to find. Poldrin held his gaze for a long moment. Then he nodded to his soldiers. They searched. They scanned. They ripped open panels and emptied compartments. Danny stood in the middle of the destruction and kept his face blank and his heart pounding. They did not find the shielded compartment. The soldiers reported failure. Poldrin's jaw tightened. Perhaps we were wrong, he said slowly. Perhaps the rumors were just rumors. Danny allowed himself to hope. Then the shielded compartment exploded outward. Rook emerged in a spray of metal and fury, but not attacking. The dire hound moved through the soldiers like water through stones, flowing around them without touching, and came to stand beside Danny, .12 weapons pointed at them both. Do not move, Poldrin said, raising his own gun. One twitch, and we fire. Rook did not look at the weapons. The dire hound looked at Danny, then at the soldiers, then back at Danny. Those blue eyes held a question. What do you want me to do? Danny put his hand on Rook's head. Stand down, he said quietly. Rook settled onto the deck, positioning itself between Danny and the hunters. Not attacking, not fleeing, just waiting. Poldrin stared at them both. His weapon did not waver, but something in his eyes had changed. What is this? He asked. This is a creature that heard me in danger and could not stay hidden, Danny said. This is a dire hound that could kill everyone on this ship in seconds, choosing to stand here and trust me to keep it safe. The silence stretched. Poldrin's finger rested on the trigger. One movement and it would end. Danny waited. Nobody moved. .12 soldiers, weapons raised, ready to fire. One dire hound, still as stone, watching them with glowing eyes. One human, hand resting on silver fur, speaking to a man whose finger trembled on a trigger. You say dire hounds destroyed your colony, Danny said. I believe you. I have read the files. I know what they can do. He stroked Rook's head gently. But I also know what this one has not done. Its nature cannot be changed, Poldrin said. It is a predator, a monster. Whatever kindness you think you see is simply waiting. One day it will turn on you, and you will understand too late. Maybe, Danny admitted, or maybe you're wrong about what its nature actually is. He kept his voice calm, steady, even though his heart was trying to break through his ribs. On Earth, where I come from, we had wolves, apex predators, pack hunters, dangerous enough that for thousands of years, humans and wolves competed for territory and prey. Danny paused. Then something changed. One ancient human met one ancient wolf and offered food instead of a weapon. That wolf became the ancestor of every dog that ever lived. Poldrin's expression did not change. A pretty story. It does not apply. Why not? Because dire hounds are more dangerous? My ancestors turned wolves into companions with nothing but patience and scraps of meat. They did not have databases or threat classifications. They just had the courage to try. Your ancestors did not watch their families get torn apart, Poldrin said, and his voice cracked on the last word. Danny felt the weight of that pain. He understood it, even if he had never experienced it himself. No, he said softly. They did not. And I am sorry for what happened to you. I truly am. But Rook is not the pack that killed your colony. He was a baby, starving in a cage, abandoned to die. The only life he has known is the one we built together. It is a Category 9 threat. The classification exists for a reason. Classifications do not account for individuals. They cannot. They tell you what a species can do at its worst. They do not tell you what a single member of that species might become under different circumstances. Rook shifted beneath Danny's hand. The dire hound rose slowly, keeping its movements deliberate and visible, and did something that made every soldier in the room freeze. IT lay down, belly to the deck, head resting on its front paws, eyes closed, complete submission, total vulnerability. A creature that could kill everyone present, choosing instead to make itself harmless. "What is it doing?" one of the soldiers whispered. "Trusting me," Danny said. "Trusting that I will protect it the way it has protected me." Pol Drin stared at the dire hound. His weapon was still raised, but his aim had drifted. The certainty in his eyes had cracked. "This is impossible," he said. "Dire hounds do not submit. They do not trust. They hunt, and they kill, and they move on to the next hunt." "That is what the files say," Danny agreed. "But the files were written by people who never try to understand them. Why would they? It is easier to call something a monster than to ask what it might become if you treated it differently." He knelt beside Rook, placing himself between the dire hound and the weapons. "Shoot if you need to," Danny said. "But you'll have to go through me first. And you will have to live with the knowledge that you killed a creature that was lying at your feet, trusting a human to keep it safe." The silence stretched until it screamed. Then Pol Drin lowered his weapon. "Stand down," ordered his soldiers. They hesitated. He repeated the command, sharper this time, and weapons dropped throughout the ruined corridor. Pol Drin stepped closer, close enough that Rook could have killed him in a heartbeat. The dire hound did not move, did not even open its eyes. "I do not understand this," Pol Drin said quietly. "Everything I know, everything I have seen, tells me this should not be possible. Maybe that is because you have only seen dire hounds as enemies," Danny said. "Maybe it is time to see one as something else." Pol Drin was silent for a long moment. Then he looked at Danny with eyes that held grief and confusion and something that might have been the smallest seed of hope. "The Council will not accept this. They will send more hunters. They will not stop until the creature is dead. Then help me show them what you just saw. You want to face the Council? With a dire hound. I want to prove that monsters are not always what we think they are." Danny looked at Rook, who had opened its eyes and was watching them both. "I want to prove that sometimes all it takes to change something is to treat it like it deserves to be changed." Pol Drin studied them for a long time. Hunter and prey, enemy and something stranger. "You are either very brave or very foolish," he said finally. Danny smiled despite everything. "Probably both." Pol Drin nodded slowly. "I will not kill you today, but the Council will make their own judgment. If you truly believe what you are saying, then face them. Present your evidence. Let them decide." "I will." The commander turned and walked toward the airlock. His soldiers followed, casting uncertain glances at the dire hound that watched them go to the threshold. Pol Drin paused. "I hope you're right, mechanic. For both your sakes." Then he was gone. Danny sat on the ruined floor of his ship, Rook pressing close against his side, and let out a breath he felt like he had been holding for months. Point 1 Battle 1. The hardest one still ahead. The council chamber was designed to make visitors feel small. Danny walked through doors 3 stories tall into a circular room where representatives from 100 species sat in rising tiers, all looking down at a single platform in the center. Lights blazed from above, leaving no shadows to hide in. Every whisper echoed. Rook walked beside him, silver fur gleaming, 6 legs moving in perfect rhythm. The dire hound showed no fear. Danny wished he could say the same. This hearing will determine the fate of the silver and dire hound designated as Rook and the human designated as Danny Webb. The speaker's voice filled the chamber. Both are charged with violations of galactic safety protocols regarding Category 9 threats. Danny stopped at the center platform. Rook sat beside him, close enough that Danny could feel warmth radiating from that powerful body. "You may present your case." Danny had practiced this speech 100 times on the journey here. Now, facing the council, all his prepared words felt hollow. So he threw them away and spoke from somewhere deeper. 3 months ago, I found this creature in a cage. He was starving, dying. The smugglers who captured him were all dead, killed when their cargo got loose. I should have left him there. Every protocol, every regulation, every survival instinct told me to walk away. He looked at Rook. The dire hound looked back, those blue eyes calm and trusting. I opened the cage instead. I gave him food. I brought him onto my ship and kept him alive. Danny turned back to the council. I broke your laws. I will not deny that. But I do not regret it. Murmurs rippled through the chamber. The Silver Dire Hound is classified as a Category 9 threat, a Thessan council member said. Your actions endangered every station, colony, and vessel you visited. Did they? Danny asked. Rook has been with me for 3 months. We have visited dozens of stations, taken countless jobs, interacted with hundreds of people. How many has he harmed? Silence. I have logs, Danny continued. Medical records showing his health under my care. Travel records showing everywhere we went. Testimonies from people who met him and were not attacked. He pulled a data chip from his pocket. Everything is here. Every moment documented. 3 months with a Category 9 predator, and the only violence occurred when pirates tried to kill me. He offered the chip to a council attendant, who took it as if it might bite. This proves nothing, another council member said. The creature is young. Its instincts have not fully developed. In time, it will become what its nature demands. Its nature, Danny repeated. Everyone keeps talking about its nature. Let me show you what that nature actually looks like. He turned to a Thessan council member who sat in the front row. May I borrow your blade? The chamber erupted. Security moved forward. Weapons appeared from hidden holsters. I am asking, Danny said calmly, for a demonstration. If Rook attacks anyone, you can kill us both on the spot. But I think you need to see this. The speaker silenced the chaos with a gesture. Then she nodded at the Thessan council member. The blade was ceremonial, sharp enough to cut, but not meant for combat. The council member descended to the platform and faced Danny with obvious reluctance. Threaten me, Danny said. This is foolish. Please. The council member raised the blade. Danny did not flinch. Rook rose. Silver Fur stood on end. A sound built in the Dire Hound's chest, low and rumbling, filling the chamber with primal dread. Every instinct in every being present screamed that death was coming. But Rook did not attack. The Dire Hound moved between Danny and the blade, positioning itself as a shield, and waited. Lower the weapon, Danny said. The council member lowered it immediately that Rook's fur settled. The sound faded. The Dire Hound sat back down and looked at Danny with something that might have been satisfaction. That is its nature, Danny said into the stunned silence. Protection. Loyalty. Dire Hounds are pack hunters, yes. But pack means family. Everything they do for family. When Rook lost his pack, he was alone. Abandoned. Broken. Danny put his hand on Rook's head. Then he found a new pack. Found family in a human mechanic who did not have the sense to walk away. He faced the council one final time. You can kill him. You have the power. But you will not be killing a monster. You will be killing a creature that loves someone enough to stand between them and danger without being asked. You will be killing something that trusted me, and through me, trusted all of you to see the truth. The chamber was silent. The speaker rose. The council will deliberate. It did not take long. By a vote of 63 to 51, the Silver Dire Hound designated as Rook is granted protected status. Danny Webb is granted legal guardianship with full responsibility for the creature's behavior. Any future violations will be judged accordingly. Danny felt his legs go weak. He dropped to his knees beside Rook and buried his face in Silver Fur. They had won. Against all odds, they had won. When Danny finally stood, Oria Vin was waiting at the chamber exit. I have a job offer, she said, smiling. Frontier work. Dangerous territory. Could use a mechanic with impressive persuasion skills and a very loyal guardian. Danny looked at Rook. The Dire Hound's tail moved just slightly. We might be interested. They walked out together into whatever came next. Human and alien. Mechanic and monster. Pack family.